The sky over the Eastern Front burned in streaks of fire and steel. It was March 1945, and the Third Reich was collapsing like a house of cards in a storm. Yet in that chaos, one man still fought with the precision of a hawk and the heart of a soldier who refused to die quietly: General Erich Hartmann, the Luftwaffe's legendary fighter ace. Known to both his comrades and enemies as the Blonde Knight of Germany, Hartmann's record was unmatched: 352 aerial victories. But now, he faced his greatest battle, not for numbers or glory, but for survival. The Soviet Red Air Force was pouring across the skies in relentless waves, and the Luftwaffe's resources had been reduced to scraps. At dawn, Hartmann stood beside his Messerschmitt Bf 109G, the Black Tulip, its nose painted with his iconic black tulip petals. Around him, the airfield at Nysa trembled under distant artillery. Ground crew worked with frantic efficiency, aware that the Soviets could reach them any hour. Overslept Ant Karl Becker, his loyal wingman, approached with a cigarette between his lips. "General, recon says a Soviet bomber formation is crossing the Oder. If they hit our bridges, the retreat is over." Hartmann looked east. "Then we stop them. This may be our last flight." Minutes later, the Bf 109s roared into the sky. Hartmann's machine climbed through the morning haze, the cold air biting through his gloves. Below, the snow-melted earth was scarred with black craters and the glint of moving armor. At 4,000 meters, the Soviet formation appeared: 30 Ilyushin IL-2 SH turmoils, with Yak-9 fighter escort. The odds were suicidal. Hartmann's voice crackled through the radio. "We hit them fast and disappear. No heroics. Karl, cover my 6." The first pass was devastating. Hartmann's cannon tore into an IL-2's engine, flames swallowing its fuselage before it plunged earthward. He rolled hard, evading a Yak's burst of tracers, then looped behind it. 3-second burst, kill confirmed. 2 down in under a minute. But the Soviets swarmed. Karl shouted, "General, 6 o'clock. Break." Hartmann jerked the stick, the Black Tulip screaming into a dive. The Yak behind him overshot, and Hartmann snapped upward into its belly, one more fireball in the sky. The dogfight raged like a storm. The radio was chaos, filled with shouts, curses, and the static of dying men. Hartmann's experience was the only thing keeping him alive, weaving between enemy bursts with impossible precision. Then disaster struck. Karl's voice vanished mid-sentence. Hartmann scanned the chaos and saw a burning Messerschmitt spiraling toward the ground. He swallowed hard but kept flying. In war, morning came after the mission, if you lived. The IL-2s were nearing the Oder Bridge. Hartmann's ammunition counter flashed low. He had one chance. Diving from the sun, he ripped through the lead bomber's cockpit, killing the pilot instantly. The aircraft veered into another, both exploding in a rolling cloud of black smoke. But in that moment, a Yak's cannon shell ripped through Hartmann's left wing. The Bf 109 shuddered violently, controls sluggish. Black smoke streamed from his engine. "General, return to base," a surviving pilot yelled. Hartmann ignored him. The last IL-2s were seconds from the bridge. If they succeeded, thousands of German troops would be trapped. Gritting his teeth, Hartmann pushed the crippled Messerschmitt into one final attack run. The plane groaned like a dying beast as he lined up the lead bomber. He squeezed the trigger, last shells fired, direct hit. The bomber erupted, debris striking Hartmann's canopy. The shockwave flipped his plane into a spin. Altimeter dropping fast, 2,000 meters, 1,500, he fought for control. The left wing was gone, the engine dead. At 100 meters, he bailed. The parachute yanked him upward just as the Black Tulip slammed into a frozen field, a black flower blooming in fire. Hartmann hit the ground hard, knees buckling. Around him, Soviet tanks were already rumbling in the distance. His surviving pilots circled overhead once before turning west. The bridge still stood. The mission had succeeded, but barely. Limping toward the forest, Hartmann thought of Karl, of the hundreds of men he'd flown with who never came home. He knew Germany would lose. But for this one morning, he had denied the enemy, given his men a chance to live another day. By the war's end, Erich Hartmann would surrender to the Americans, not the Soviets, to avoid the gulags. He would survive years of captivity, later serving in West Germany's new Air Force. But this last stand over the Oder would remain his most personal battle, when the Blonde Knight, against impossible odds, fought not for a dying Reich, but for the men who trusted him with their lives. And in the cold dawn of history, that made him more than a legend. It made him a soldier.